Hello everyone, welcome to Kalavira Vegan School. My name is Halima and today I'm going to show you how to make a vegan Appam Balik or peanut pancake. Now, Appam Balik is a traditional street snack that is found in parts of Southeast Asia like Malaysia, Indonesia and Singapore. In Singapore, you can probably find it in kiosks at shopping malls. Now, Appam Balik, as like with any other pancake, is made with eggs and often they use milk in it as well. There are two versions to this. One is the traditional version where they use yeast and sometimes baking soda to help it rise. This is a more longer process. It takes about an hour or two because you need to let the batter ferment until it's nice and bubbly before you can use it. So it requires a bit of pre-planning ahead. On the other hand, the more modernized version uses baking powder and baking soda. You just mix up the ingredients and then you're good to go. For me, I've tried both versions and I find that I like the yeast one a little bit better because the texture is softer, chewier, perhaps because of the longer fermentation process. So that's what I'm going to show you today and I hope you like it. Now we're going to look at the ingredients. Now for our Appam Balik, we are going to be using normal plain flour that you can pick up at the supermarket. You can also use organic unbleached flour, or if you are on a healthier diet, you can use a combination of wholemeal flour with plain flour as well. Now, wholemeal flour, you've got to be careful not to add too much. About 20 to 30% wholemeal flour is good. And any more, it will affect the texture, and also wholemeal flour has a nutty flavor which you don't really want in this dish. Other than the plain flour, we'll also be adding a bit of sugar. This is just normal plain sugar. I'm using organic sugar. You can just use any cane sugar, it's fine as well. Because we're going to be doing the yeast version, I've got just normal yeast that you can pick up from the supermarkets. It's just the active dry yeast. And we've got a bit of baking soda here, about half a teaspoon. And of course, a little bit of salt. And because I like my dish to have a little bit of vanilla flavor, I'm just using some vanilla extract here. This is really optional. If you want, you can use it. If not, you can leave it out. For the liquid ingredients, I'm going to be using soy milk, and I'm also going to be using a bit of thick coconut milk. The reason why I'm using coconut milk is because I want a bit of richness in my dish, because we're not using eggs, we're not using milk, so I want a little element of depth in the food. So I'm going to be using a bit of coconut milk. If you are on a fat-free diet, please feel free to just leave it out and use 100% soy milk. Or if you're not into soy, you can also use almond milk, rice milk. Or if you don't have all these milks at home, it's fine. You can just use plain water and it works perfectly fine as well. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to put all our ingredients together. I'm going to start with the dry ingredients. So I'm going to just take my plain flour and I'm going to add it into my bowl, all of it. Then I'm going to be adding my sugar and my yeast, baking soda here that I'm going to put in now, and finally I'm just going to add my salt in as well. Okay, I think this needs a bit of help, so I'm just going to use my spoon to scrape it all in. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mix this up first so that everything is just evenly incorporated. So once this is done, I'm going to add my liquid ingredients. So I'm going to start with the soy milk, about 200 ml here. All of it goes in. And next I'm going to add the coconut milk, just all of it as well. Again, if you don't have all these milks at home, you can just use plain water. I've tried it with plain water and it works as equally well too. Okay, and then finally I'm just going to add my vanilla extract inside here. Okay. And all I'm going to do is just whisk everything up together. Okay. If you notice right now it's a bit lumpy, so you just have to keep whisking everything until it forms a really nice smooth batter. So it's still quite lumpy at this moment. Now this recipe is actually very easy. If you want to make it a bit more exotic, feel free to add in different flavorings like cinnamon, nutmeg. You can just go crazy with all sort of flavoring, even maybe some orange zest, just to spice things up a little bit instead of just keeping it to the traditional flavors. Okay, you can see that it's getting smoother, but it's still a bit lumpy. There's still a bit of lumps, so I'm just going to whisk it a little bit more. Tiny lumps are okay, but we don't really want big pieces of lumps in our batter, because in the end when you bite into it, you're just going to get a lump of flour, which you really want to avoid. Okay, and then if you notice, it's now nice and ribbony, and this is what we want, and this is also the texture that we're looking for, just like a normal pancake batter, not too thick, not too thin as well. If it's too thick, you can always just drizzle in some water, or if it's too runny for you, you can just always add a little bit of plain flour inside and you'll be fine. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to set my batter aside for about an hour or hour and a half until it ferments and it starts to bubble up. I'll show you how it looks like after in an hour's time. Okay, while the batter is fermenting, I'm going to show you how to make the filling for the peanut pancake, or the Appam Balik as we call it as well. There are two types of filling. Traditionally, we have a more dry peanut sugar mixture that people tend to use, and in Singapore you will notice that there is another version which is a little bit more creamy, more paste-like. So I'm going to show you both versions. First, I'm going to show you the traditional way of doing it. For that, we will just be needing some toasted sesame seeds, and we will also be needing some grated peanut here. It's been toasted as well, and we have some granulated sugar. You can use any type of sugar that you like. The coarser it is, the more crunchy it will be. So it's really entirely up to you whether you want to use a fine sugar or a more coarse grained sugar. The way to put it together is actually really easy. All you have to do is just mix all of these three ingredients together and you're ready to go. So I'm just going to grab a spoon and I'm just going to add the sugar to my peanut mixture. And I'm also going to just put some sesame seeds inside. It's really up to you how much sugar that you want or how much peanut that you want to add together. In some recipes, they will also ask you to add in cream corn, which you don't really see in Singapore, but sometimes you get to see these in places like Malaysia, where they actually add cream corn and and butter or margarine in their filling as well. But I'm just going to keep it simple. So our dry filling is ready, and it looks something like this. It's just a mixture of sugar, peanuts, and sesame seeds. Now I'm going to show you how to do the peanut paste filling. For this, we will be needing some peanut butter. You can use any sort of peanut butter. It doesn't matter whether it's crunchy or creamy. Any will work. And again, you'll be needing some sugar. Again, the coarser it is, the more granulated it is, the more crunchy it will be. So it's really up to you what texture that you want. And to that, we will be adding some peanut as well. And again, some sesame seeds. Now, all you have to do is grab your bowl with your peanut butter, and then you just want to mix it up to loosen it up a bit, because sometimes it gets a bit thick and chunky and you don't really want that. So now you notice that the paste is quite smooth. To this, I'm just going to add my sugar. Again, the proportions are really entirely up to you. If you want it to be sweeter, go ahead and add more sugar. If you don't like it so sweet, you don't have a sweet tooth, then you just reduce the sugar. And the same with the peanut. If you want it to have a really thick peanut flavor, you go ahead and add more. If not, you can always just add a little bit. And sesame seed, of course, is good for you, so there's no harm in adding all of it actually. So all I'm going to do is just mix this up. And if you notice, it gets pretty dry, but don't worry, just keep going. Yeah, and it gets absorbed in. Okay, at this point, if you notice, it looks really thick. You can do two things to help loosen it up. One, you can just warm this over the fire or in a bowl of hot water, and the peanut butter will start to loosen up, and it will be in a very creamy, spreadable consistency. Or you can add a bit of vegetable oil or coconut oil inside here to help loosen it up. So what I'm going to do is that I've got a little bit of coconut oil here just set aside. This is just organic coconut oil. So I'm just going to add this in because it also ties in with the flavor of the coconut milk that we add in the batter. But if you don't want that, you can just use any neutral flavored vegetable oil, works as well. Okay, so now if you notice, it's starting to loosen up a little bit, and this is what I want. Okay, and I think we are ready to check on our batter to see if it's good to go. So let me show you how the fermented batter looks like. Okay, after an hour, if you notice, our batter is now really nice and bubbly, and it has fermented quite well. This took about an hour to an hour and a half. Again, really don't worry if yours takes longer, because it also really depends on the temperature of the room. If it's a cold day or if your ingredients are cold, you just take the soy milk out of the fridge. It will take longer to ferment, so don't worry. The only thing you want to avoid is to let it become sour. You don't want that to happen. So anything between an hour to 2 hours to let it ferment is perfectly fine. Okay, what I'm going to do is I've got my ladle here. So don't worry about breaking up the bubble. So if you notice, it's actually a bit on the sticky side, but this is what we want, and the consistency is what we want as well. If you find that it's a little bit thick, feel free to add a bit of water. In this case, I think it probably needs a bit of water because it does look a little too thick for my liking. So I'm just going to add a bit of water. So I'm just going to put in about 2 tablespoons of water. If you want, again, you can use soy milk or coconut milk. I just want to make sure that I don't add in too much water to dilute it. It's always okay to add less, and then you can slowly increase the amount of water, but you cannot over add and compensate by adding more flour later. At this point, you really don't want to use a whisk because you don't want to break up the bubbles and be very aggressive with your batter. So you just want to sort of fold in the water and until everything is just a nice evenly mixed. Okay, so I think we are good to go. And don't worry about breaking up the bubbles because you still have baking soda inside there, which will eventually react with the heat and it will help it to rise. So don't worry if you find that you're breaking up the bubbles while stirring it, it's perfectly fine. So now I'm going to show you how I'm going to get it done over at my small little stove here. And I'm using a non-stick pan. Non-stick pans are good for this sort of pancake that we are trying to make. And also, if possible, try to get one that has a heavy bottom because you want the heat to penetrate evenly and cook your pancake properly. If not, your base will get burnt while your pancake top will not be cooked. Okay. Traditionally, of course, I have it's a brass pan here. It's really heavy. This is my mom's pan that I've borrowed from her. Traditionally, this is what they use to make Appam Balik in, and it does cook really beautifully because it's a very thick pan, very heavy pan, which ensures even heat penetration. It is available in Singapore, but I think you probably have to really look for it. I know most of us won't be able to find it or don't really have any use for it, and that's why I'm just going to use a normal saucepan. So I'm just going to on my induction cooker here, and I'm going to just sort of let it warm up a little bit. And even though this is a non-stick pan, I've got a little bit of coconut oil here. Again, you can use any sort of neutral vegetable oil that doesn't have a strong smell. And I'm just going to sort of lightly grease my pan to just make sure that nothing sticks. I don't really want to leave oil residue. I just want to coat it so that everything is okay. Okay, so that's good. I'm just going to leave this aside for the time being and let this pan warm up. Again, you want it to warm up nicely, so a moderate heat would be good because when you pour in your batter, you want it to start cooking immediately. You don't want it to take a really long time to cook because it will end up drying up your pancake as well. Okay, I think the pan is sufficiently warmed, so I'm just going to bring down the heat a little bit. And if you notice, even though I've mixed up my batter, very much soon after the bubbles start to form again, so the yeast will actually continue to ferment, so you don't have to worry about breaking up the bubbles. So what I'm going to do at this juncture is I'm going to put about a ladle and a half of batter in. Again, it's really up to you how much you want to add. If you want your peanut pancake to be thicker, go ahead and add more. If you want it to be thinner, you can always add a little less. It's perfectly fine. Just want to make sure that everything is just evenly spread. So I'm just increasing the heat slightly to make sure that it's cooked. Now it's only cooked on one side, so it will take a while for it to slowly heat up through and dry the surface. So I'm going to show you how it looks like once the surface starts to dry. Okay, so if you notice, the batter that we have poured in is already starting to dry up, and the color has changed to a nice yellow. And if you actually touch and see, there's one way to test as well, it's actually dry. So you know that your peanut pancake is more or less ready. I'm going to show you how to do this the traditional way. For that, they tend to use either margarine or butter. I'm using Nuttilex, which is a vegan margarine that you can get at Giant or Cold Storage and lots of other supermarkets as well. So I'm just going to take a little bit of margarine. So again, it's up to you how much you want to add. So I'm just going to slowly just dot my pancake with a bit of butter all over. Again, it's really up to you. If you want it to be healthier, you can always just leave this out. Okay, I think this is good. Okay, and if you notice, it will start to slowly melt in, and it's fine. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the dry pancake filling. So again, it's up to you how generous you want to be. Feel free to add more or less or as much as you like. I'm just going to sprinkle some everywhere, and I think that's good. Just going to spread it out. Spread it out a little bit. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to fold it into half. Okay, so I'm just using my spatula, pressing it down, and I'm just going to off the heat, and I'm going to remove this over here. I've got a bowl ready for me. I'm just going to let it set for a couple of minutes, and then I'm going to slice it up so that we can actually have a look and see how it looks like inside. Okay, I've actually made another pancake here, and for this I'm going to use the paste filling. The reason why I've done this and put it aside is because I want it to cool down a little bit, because peanut butter tends to melt in heat and you don't really want your filling to become very runny. So what I'm going to do now, I've already prepared this and I've taken it out of the pot. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up my paste again from earlier that we did, the peanut pancake paste, and I'm just going to put nice amount of it here. Again, it's up to you. If you like a lot of peanut filling in your pancake, go ahead and add more. If you don't want so much, you can just reduce it. I'm going to just put it for half the amount, because when I fold over, this will be just nice. And I'm leaving the edges alone, because when I press it in, it will go all the way to the side. So you don't really want everything to run out of your pancake. So I think this is good. So I'm just going to use my hand to just gently fold it over, and then I'm just going to just gently press it down, and it will look like this. I'm going to show you now how to cut this for the purposes of serving. I've got my dry filling here, and we've got our wet, moist filling here. So all you have to do is just take your knife, any butter knife would be fine, and slowly we just want to slice it through. It's giving me a bit of, okay, seems all right. I was thinking it's going to give me a bit of problem, but it's all right. So I'm just going to cut it through, and if you notice, it looks a bit like this. It's still a bit warm, that's why the filling is starting to become a bit gooey and runny. And I'm just going to set this aside. So all you have to do is just slice it up into portions, and usually that's how they serve it. This one can be easily cut into 3 to 4 portion sizes. And I'm going to show you how the dry one looks like as well. I'm just going to go right in the middle. This one is a little bit more browned than the other one. And if you notice, yeah, it looks like this. So we have a comparison here. So it really depends on whether you like the moist, creamy feeling or you like the more dry, coarse, crunchy feeling. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I really hope that you'll be able to try this with your family and friends. For full recipe details, don't forget to visit www.kalavira.com. See you soon.